After a person establishes the first most important thing, which is being able to hit the ground in the same spot time after time after time, and that is the factor that separates the best players from the worst players, the short game does present some unique challenges that the full swing doesn't. Namely, in the full swing, the golfers are trying to hit the ball as far as they can, or nearly as far as they can. The short game has a different priority in that you're not always trying to hit this club to its maximum distance. In other words, there's a piece of the short game that's important for the golfer to understand, and that is helping to control the distance on less than full shots. So Mike and I are going to get into the regulation of the thrust and regulation of the power and teach the golfer how to control the distance on these short shots as well as control where the club hits the ground.
But again, there is a basic structure that someone would want to learn in the beginning to be able to become more sophisticated as how far the ball goes, how high it goes, how far it rolls out, etc.
So it becomes important at that point, once you understand what you're trying to do in the short game, to establish a baseline or a motion, a basic chipping motion that produces a certain repeatable shot. That would be like the golfer's go-to shot. They would use this shot as a baseline and derive all the other mutations from this basic chipping motion. As we look at the basic chipping motion from down the line, there's a couple of components that it's important for the golfer to understand. First is the distance from the ball. You'll see that in Mike's baseline chipping that his distance to the ball is much closer. Say, one more time, back there please, Mike.
Go up here, yep.
You see that in his basic chipping motion here, the distance from the ball can be as little as, 5, 6, 7 inches from the ball. Okay, so he's much closer to the ball than his original motion. Okay, Mike, if you'll show the original normal swing. Okay, so he comes much closer to the ball, and as he does that, the angle of the shaft becomes more vertical to the ground. This is important because the closer Mike gets to the ball and the more vertical the shaft becomes, that makes the plane or the path of his swing as he swings back and through come straighter into the ball. And on the shot where you don't need power, where power is not important, but starting the ball very straight is important, this becomes a central piece in the puzzle to start the ball straight. So again, Mike's closer to the ball, his shaft angle is more vertical, and on the backswing, what this does is it helps to slow the rate that the club face opens. You'll see that Mike's club is not rotating open as much, okay, as it would if he got farther from the ball. Okay, the plane would be shallower and the inclination would be for the face to turn open more. So by being closer to the ball, raising the shaft angle up, and then on the basic chipping motion, keeping the club face from rotating open, okay, this is going to help the golfer to start the ball the straightest. Now,
and we've already gone through that in the long game. It's also giving you a chance not to hit the ball as far.
Correct.
Because you're moving the club in a straight line instead of moving inward.
And it's important for golfers to understand then that as you get, as Mike just said, that as you get closer to the ball, you don't have as much inward force on the backswing, which is starting to take potential power out of the stroke. So not only are you enabling yourself to start the ball the straightest, you're reducing your potential distance as you get closer to the ball. So what I'm going to do, as Mike sets up here, is I'm going to walk through the components for the basic chipping motion starting from the ground up. And I just want to make sure that we make clear that it's important that a person have a basic motion or a baseline to work from. This is where you're going to derive the feel on all the other shots when you want to hit the ball higher or lower. Those will all be relative to your baseline motion, and you'll know what components to adjust to do that. But it's important in the very beginning to understand what your baseline would be. So Mike and I are going to establish that now as he sets up to this ball, and we're going to start from the ground up. It's very easy to memorize the components if you just start from the ground up, okay? So we'll start with the feet, and you'll notice that on the feet here, Mike's front foot, you see how it's rotated open? You see how it's turned open like 20 to 30 degrees, Now, as we go along, we're going to discuss the significance of each one of these components individually, but for now, we're just going to narrate the list that would make up the basic chipping motion. So again, back. The front foot is turned out, say 20 degrees. The ball is positioned on the inside part of Mike's back foot. Okay? If you look at the weight on Mike's feet, the weight is more, say, 70-30 on the front. So he's got his hip girdle moved forward just slightly, an inch or so, moving the weight, okay, to 70-30 on the left. Okay, so we've got the foot turned out. We've got the ball on the inside part of the back foot. We've got the weight moved forward to 70-30. Now, the next piece as we work our way up is the handle of the club. And what is its location? Okay, the handle of the club is lined up on the inside part of the front leg for baseline. Okay, so inside part of the front leg with the handle. Okay, now working my way up, you notice how Mike's arms are not bent, how they're straight. Okay, nearly straight, not flexed, but straight. Okay, so now.
Also, my shoulders, the center of my shoulder turn is just in front of the golf ball right here. It's not behind the ball. So if you look at a dress, my shoulders only have a few degrees of tilt to them.
Correct.
They're almost level.
Correct. You can see then if I put the club down, or we draw a line down from the center of Mike's shoulder turn, how that's in front of the ball. Not behind the ball, in front of the ball. Okay, so he's got the center of his shoulder turn in front of the ball. He's got his hands, or his shoulders almost level to the ground. Now, Mike, will you tell us how your neck is? Are you looking, do you have your head up or down?
My head is down, my neck's down so that my eyes can see the golf ball without straining my eyes in the sockets.
So as Mike sets up, you notice how you don't see his face here when he sets up with his visor on because his neck is tilted forward. Okay, now I'm going to go through this again a little more quickly just to reiterate the components of the baseline chipping motion. We're going to start with the ground again, and I'm going to add one more piece, and the reason why I'm doing it this way is because we went over the components for the basic chipping, but the last most important piece is the angle of the club face. Okay, it's the angle of the club face and the way it's held that dictates the loft. Okay, and as Mike moves the ball back and his weight forward, okay, he's able to hit down at the ball, but as he's moving that ball back, he's keeping his club square to the target, which means it's in a de-lofted position. Okay, so as his handle is forward, his ball is back, the face is staying square to the target line, okay, which means that he's reducing the effective loft on the club. So this shot's going to be a lower trajectory type of shot. Okay, it's just to expand on that at this point, I think it's important that one of the things that the poor golfer, the amateur golfer does, the inexperienced golfer, is they don't change the club face enough when they chip. They keep it the same way on all the chipping and pitching. And the best players, through experience, have learned how much they need to close the club to make the ball roll, and how much they need to open the club to make the ball go higher and stop quicker. And what we're trying to do here is to give you a basic baseline motion, and then we want to emphasize, as we establish the basic motion, the importance of how opening and closing the club affects the height and the amount the ball rolls. Okay.
So once we have the setup, that's going to dictate a lot of being able to control where the club hits the ground. Now, the basic motion here in the chip shot is not one that promotes a lot of power. So when I make this motion, I'm just keeping my weight forward, my arms are staying straight, my shoulders are moving a little bit, and I'm keeping my wrist angles firm. There's no breaking in the wrist.
Okay, so when you take the club back, Mike, just like the full swing, what would you say is beginning the backswing as you do this?
The movement of my shoulders.
Okay, and you're just tilting your spine to the left, lowering your shoulder.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
That'd be correct.
So as Mike swings back, we want to emphasize how simple this chipping motion is. Okay, there's not a lot of pieces involved in this. So much of it is in the preparation of the shot that we spend a lot of time putting the details out there for you. And then second, it's learning how the ball flies when you chip it out of different lies so that you can accurately predict what the ball does. The stroke itself